When you go back to the Old Testament, for example, in Exodus 20, where you have the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not make any graven image of any likeness of anything being in heaven or earth or under the sea. If you go just 5 chapters later, just 5 chapters in Exodus 25, verse 18, what do you have? God commands Moses to make the Ark of the Covenant, and over top of the mercy seat, you have 2 enormous, over 5 foot tall, golden angels. They're cherubim. And so God and I love the way that it's written there. In the King James Version, it says, "Thou shalt make 2 golden cherubim out of beaten gold." So wait a minute. God said no statues, and then he commands Moses to make a statue. And think of this as well. The Ark of the Covenant, where you have these enormous golden statues, became a source of God's grace and God's power for God's people. And then you go to Numbers chapter 21, verses 8 and 9, and you see when Moses and the children of Israel were in the wilderness and they began to rebel against God, God sends a plague of snakes among them. Moses intercedes for them. God commands Moses once again. He says, make a brazen serpent, put it up on a pole, and when the children of Israel looked to it, they were healed. Now, you and I know that in John chapter 3, verses 11 and 12, in the New Testament, we find that is a type or an image representing the coming Christ. But nevertheless, the point is God uses stuff. He uses the physical world to be instruments whereby he brings his blessing to his people. And so even in the Old Testament, you have that. Now, even though you don't have any images of God in the Old Testament, because God in Deuteronomy 4:16 has a stricture against having images of God. But even there, it's an interesting point here, Anonymous. He says, God tells them why. He says, I did not command you concerning the making of images when I brought you out of Israel, because I took no form among you. So God tells them why. I don't want you making forms because I didn't take a form. Well, guess what? In the New Testament, he does. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we believe, Anonymous, that in the incarnation now, God has become flesh. And so while we only have that limited use of images in the Old Testament, we have a fuller sense of images in the New Testament because, well, principally in Colossians chapter 1, verse 14 and 15, especially verse 15, it says, Christ is the image of God, the firstborn of all creation. And the Greek word there for image is ikon or icon. Christ is the ultimate icon because of the incarnation. We believe in the incarnation, God became physical. And so he relates to us physically. Not that he didn't in the old. Yes, he did through the ark, but the ark and the brazen serpent and such, but now it's a much more intimate
So Tim,
and
let's
physical
pull this
relationship.
together, and then Anonymous will hear from you. So you're saying, Tim, that when God said, do not make graven images, he wasn't saying not make images of any kind, because he later commanded people to make images.
Yes.
Rather, he was forbidding the creation of images people would worship in idolatry.
Absolutely right, Trent. And Anonymous, he's condemning idolatry, not the making of statues, because if he was condemning the making of statues, he contradicts himself.
Right, because he wouldn't command you later to do something he said.